Hey, folks, we're back, and we've been talking about these things called AI agents, but there's a discussion, maybe even a debate now about, well, what does it mean to have an AI agent? What's the level of autonomy that I should give it? And is it an AI agent if it's not autonomous? And Perforce this week kind of raised this debate as when they launched a AI agent for testing. And one of the things that they were saying is this AI agent adapts to the mission so that it does more than just execute a task. But Garima, what is going on here? Because I feel like a lot of folks are tossing around the term AI agent, and there's a definition for the word agency. But just how much faith can we put in an AI agent? How autonomous can they get, and should they get?
So AI agents is not a solopreneur, right? So AI agent comes with system, right? So there is a lot of things behind it. We can talk about that in a while. But what this announcement by Perforce Software is that they are injecting or inducing AI agents, and they have designed these AI agents for testing mobile applications. So when we talk about mobile applications, there's a lot of testing going on in terms of how the UI looks like, the data behind it, the logic, the functional testing, and all that, right? So they claim that they have self healing tests which will automatically change according to the changes made in the UI or the data behind it or the business logic behind it. What are the advantages of it? And I mean, I put the pros before the cons. So, for pros, what we see is you can have a lot of natural language prompts which can democratize testing. And if you remember, Alan, we had some discussions with open text on this, that this is one of the premium areas where we can start to investigate the potential of AI agents, right? So this is one of the quick wins. So I do believe that this can provide some kind of, trust in building AI agents for testing specifically. What it also is claiming is that they have cut down the process and the testing, and they're saving 50% of their time when this technology is onboarded or it gets matured, right? But there are other factors to be kind of counted in, because if you see that these autonomous agents, how they work, like there is a system behind it. You will need some engineering services which will enable these agents. You also need data, and transitioning from, let's say, script based tests to scriptless testing is not a piece of cake, right? So there's a lot of paradigm shift in how testing practices are maturing. So there is these scripts and frameworks will not no longer be required in this kind of paradigm shift. But then you would need new skill set, you need integration maturity, right? There's a lot of complexity when you talk about this seamless integration with CI/CD pipelines, for example, and not to shy away from the fact that data behind it, right? I mean, who would provide that data, who owns that data? I mean mobile testing is for specific set of customer base. And of course, this also raises some questions around hallucination, for example, which we have talked about in different segments, right? And validating our proof points that how much this is viable. Last thing which I would also mention is that skill set is quite scarce in this area. Like, we'll have to still mature the prompt engineering part of it and see how this whole thing plays around. A lot of system thinking is required to enable this efficiency from a testing point of view, right? And this efficiency can also go for a toss if you start to build technical depth. Because if intent versus the alignment of intent is not happening, then it also becomes a major issue or major technical depth in the longer run. So we have to watch out for the pros and cons of this technology. And of course, I do believe that this is one of the quick wins. Testing applications and testing software through scriptless or agentic framework is, I think, a good kind of segue into proof pointing this technology.
Garima, correct me if I'm wrong. My impression is that a lot of pre-prod testing is more observed in the breach. Like regression testing, and especially user acceptance testing, that sort of thing. Like it's a checkbox, but it isn't like particularly well or thoroughly done. Is that right? Because if you look at it that way, what we have here is what I would call maybe a rougher, somewhat rougher, somewhat less accurate, especially as it gets more autonomous, or less effective, let's say, way of testing, but more comprehensive and more reliable. And so that's quite reasonable trade off, which is I can't pay these dang developers or product managers or whatever to get appropriate testing done and keep having failures or problems or user issues. This way, at least I feel like it's more thorough, and we can focus our human capital on other things. Does that sound right?
Yes, I think quantitative assessment and qualitative assessment are two different things, right? So, what we can benefit out of this kind of technology is quantitative assessment, where there is a yes or a no answer to it, certain amount of test cases, and those testing scenarios are overlooked, and you have to have a lot of manual intensive labor to kind of change those test cases in sync with the UI changes you have done on the data you have kind of synced in, or even the functionality testing from a very pro bono perspective. But when it comes to qualitative assessment, it's still like early days for testing, because this is again how valid is this validation, without having a specific framework or a practice behind it.
So let me be provocative. Last tester out the door, shut out the lights. Right? This is the beginning. It's not the end of the beginning, it's the beginning of the end. Right? When you could do this and boost test efficiency by 70%, 70%, that's not nothing to sneeze at. And it's just the beginning. I was just, before coming on the gang today, I did an episode of the Platform Engineering Show, which will be out in a couple of days, with my friend Keith Townsend and Luca Galante from platformengineering.org. And one of the points we made, we talking about is AI enterprise ready from a platform point of view. And one of the things that Luca brought up was what we're seeing with this AI is that things that lend themselves well to AI, like testing, doing these scriptless testings and doing, Guy, why aren't those tests? It's not that they're not important. They weren't important enough to get the resources they needed. But
I disagree about the importance. Just real quick, it's that they're boring. It's for human beings to work on. It's boring for most of them.
Yes.
It's boring to be methodical and complete and all that other sort of stuff. They just want to get it out of the way and get back to coding.
But it's made for it. But AI is made for it.
Just for the record there, that's Guy Currier saying that testers are boring, not Textron gang.
No, not testers.
All of his views are his own. But anyway, but it was made, AI is made for this, right? And so what we're going to see is a shift to these things where AI is dominant, and it could be very, testing is one aspect of it, is coding another aspect of it, is observability another aspect of it. But these things that seem are relatively low-hanging fruit for the AI are the things that you're going to see shift over to the AI, and you're going to see massive, not layoffs, maybe layoffs, but a lot less people doing that job than do them today. And
and there's a lot of test management and lifecycle, the software development lifecycle firms, like it increasingly added AI-based automation to testing and adjusting, testing in flight, and like all that sort of stuff.
There's so much noise about the layoffs here with AI agents, and you can see why. There's going to definitely be tasks that are automated, but I also look at it differently, and I go, There were tons of companies out there that could not build any software to save their life. And if it becomes easier for them to do, more of those companies will build custom software using what will eventually just become a small army of agents. But somebody has to direct those agents and orchestrate that and manage that and tell that small army what to do. And I think that's where the role of the DevOps people evolves to. It's less about writing scripts and more about managing the workflow or the outcome. Kareem, am I crazy?
I think, Mike, I want to change the narration from layoffs to less work week, less work hours, right? So technology is an enabler to help, uplift our quality of life. So I would like to change this narration saying that, when you have AI bots and AI agents in your system, do we ensure that our work hours and work week hours are kind of, consolidating and we have quality time with, family and community? That is the conversation we need to take, right? I mean, this is again a narration change, a bold step. Somebody has to speak to these kind of things, right?
Agreed. And that, if you believe the hype, that's what people will do. Right? That's how we migrate this. This is the path. And eventually we all wind up on a starship going where no man's or person's gone before, right? And we don't worry about money and all of that good stuff. My fear, though, Garima, and to you all out there, is buckle in. It's going to be a bumpy ride till you get there, because there's going to be a lot of displacement. There'll be a lot of angst and stuff. And eventually we may wind up in that place. But
I would say amongst the tech community, there's maybe 50%, 50 to 60 or more percent misunderstanding of what AI does and how it works. And in the business community, it's probably 90%. People see, it's evident what happens when you use it. But that's the bump. That's really the bump. And I was also wondering in the last segment, some of us, I'll call myself out, have said that there's going to be some form of AI backlash at some point. Maybe it's building now, where people suddenly realize they're not getting what they thought they were getting from it. They temporarily turn against it. This would be, one example of that, which is, I have all of this stuff and the thing still failed anyway. And I can't figure out what it's doing. And so many agents, I can't manage or understand them, that we could very quickly reach that point.
Yeah. So I had a conversation within the community, and these communities are for this. So, for example, Continuous Delivery Foundation ambassadors came together, and we had this question earlier as well in the community, that who is monitoring your monitoring server, right? So, who is actually monitoring your AI agents? It's AI or it's something else. So, if let's say you're creating test cases and validation cases, who is doing qualitative, quantitative assessment of those validation cases, right? Is it AI versus AI? So this is a lot of work to be done through community leaders, right? To define the semantics, to define the assessment criteria, to ensure that we safely onboard these technologies, also cut down the hype around all this, right? So a lot of work is on the shoulders of the leaders and the practitioners for building this kind of an ecosystem.
Agreed.
Somebody has to
Guys, we're over
understand.
time on the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Teri.
I was just
You
saying,
get the last word.
somebody has to understand too why these agents are making the decisions they make as well. I think that's human intervention.
Yeah, I think that's a beginning thing. It's a question of trust, right? Once you trust them to make the decision, then you ease off. But we're over time on this one. We need to take a break here on the gang. We're going to come back and let's get personal. 23andMe and DNA, and how much do we know about you? It's scary. You're watching TechStrong, gang.